Hi, and welcome to Women's Health Unwrapped. Thank you for joining me today. If you're a regular listener, it's great to have you back. If you're new, then welcome. We are a weekly podcast show bringing you different guest experts, insights, and real life stories to help you unwrap what healthy living really means. Because in midlife, more than any other season of life, it is so important for you to be able to put those pieces together of what healthy living means and also how to live a healthy life. So we're sharing lots of habits and tips and actionable advice to really help you thrive through menopause and beyond, because we need to stop surviving, ladies. We need to thrive and live a long, happy, strong life. Today's guest is certainly here to help you do just that. I'm joined by Justin Janoska, and we're going to be deep diving into autoimmune conditions and diseases. But much more than that, we're going to talk about overall health and how being healthy as a woman is really, really important at all stages of life, but particularly as we navigate the changes menopause brings, to realise this mind-body connection and how our physical and mental health are integrated, each impacting the other, and how finding the root to health is a 360 approach. It isn't about just going on a diet, and Justin's the author of the post-dieting comeback book. So we also touch on why we have to stop focusing on dieting and how chronic dieting can lead to some of these autoimmune conditions, as well as creating chronic stress, which is a key factor in lots of different illnesses and diseases. We talk about how the accumulation of stress in our nervous system over many years is the route to feeling unwell or actually having a diagnosis of a disease. It isn't just one thing. So it's really important as women that we look at our personality traits and our identity, as Justin talks about, things like perfectionism and people pleasing, which lots of women are, saying yes to everything and doing everything for everybody else. So listen to that bit. Justin also shares quite a few golden nuggets. One of them that I love was his take on how we need to slow down as women. We need to have silence, solitude, and stillness, things that women particularly struggle so much to do and to bring in as habits, but how important it is to realize why we need to do this and the link to our energy and what that will positively do to our energy, because energy is such a big part of leading to some of these chronic illnesses and diseases. So this is an educational but very inspirational episode that I know you are going to take so much from. So stay tuned. Whatever you're doing, walking, preparing the dinner, driving, or just taking space for you for this almost hour episode, I know you're going to enjoy it. Please, as always, share any feedback, but let's get into the conversation with Justin. Hi, Justin. Great to have you here on the podcast with me today.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to get to chat with you and to dive into what I know is going to be a really interesting topic for lots of different reasons, because your expertise is not only in autoimmune conditions and Hashimoto's in particular, but diet culture and that diet cycle that many women are stuck in, as well as nervous system and that 360-degree approach to health. So lots for us to explore together. But first, I just wanted to ask you about your own health habits, and what would you say is your most impactful healthy habit right now?
Oh gosh. The most impactful health habit at the moment for me, I would honestly tell you it's Qigong. It's right now that's been, about a year and a half in the works, I guess, of learning and training under a teacher that I met in Bali about 2 years ago almost. And so, yeah, it's been a really nice practice. And I like to integrate that with my clients now, because it's my kind of way of weaving it into the healing process, because it's basically meditation in motion, right? And there's some medical qigong that we can do as well with that. But just the practice of it has been really regulating. And, you can start to play with the consciousness and the energies and kind of work with that if you'd like to as well. But at the very least, it's just good for mobility and flexibility. So that to me has been a pretty consistent staple every day for me right now.
Oh, wow. I can't say that a guest has ever given that as one of their healthy habit tips, but that's really interesting. And I love that you picked that up in Bali. What an incredible way to discover it and bring it into your life.
Absolutely. It's great. I encourage it for
Yeah.
people to try it.
Yeah, I honestly don't know very much about it at all. Is it similar to Tai Chi? Is it that kind of
it is. In fact,
practice? Yeah.
my teacher teaches Tai Chi as well. It's a little bit more involved, but Qigong is very simple because it's repetitive and it's also easy to follow.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. We'll have to check that one out. Okay. So, as I said in the intro, we're talking about autoimmune conditions and recovering, healing from them. I'd love to hear what kind of term you talk about. So I think just to get us started, it would be good to bring some context to what we mean when we say autoimmune disease or an autoimmune condition, and what they mean, some examples of those, and also what you're seeing with the increase of them in women, especially.
Yeah, well, I mean, at a basic level, we could say that autoimmunity is this sort of phenomenon of your body misfiring and attacking itself. And the $1 million question is, why is that? And I think despite all the plethora of information and science we have, we still don't really know. We have some idea that, the environment and lifestyle are the biggest factors. It's not genetics. It's a very small piece of it, but my mom has Hashimoto's, and I could have the genes for it, but I'm not expressing it because maybe I'm living a certain way that's keeping those genes at bay. I don't know, right? That's my theory around that. And maybe I'll change, and that'll change if I, act or behave or think and eat differently, right? But knock on wood. But that's in essence what's happening. And the follow-up question to that was, forgive me.
With women, like, we're seeing a huge rise.
Oh, why?
So
that's right.
yeah, just if you've got any perspective, sure. I know that's a huge thing, and actually there's a lot of medical papers about how difficult it is to say why women. Just what do you think personally on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely my alley, and the clientele that I work with is the middle-aged woman, and most of Hashimoto's and autoimmune diseases are kind of showing up in not only women, but around that age anyway, 30, 40, 50 and plus. And, but I also actually, even this past week, I get a lot of messages from women who say, I have a 10-year-old who has Hashimoto's and a 15-year-old who has MS or something. So we can't all say it's about one thing or another. They're too young. Why is that? And I think that, there's a lot of speculation around that. And I think, the environment is a big, definitely a player there. I'm going to say and be biased and say that a lot of emotional stuff and stress and trauma perhaps is underpinning a lot of that too, at least for the older women as well. So why is there an increase? I thought a lot about this, and while I do agree that the environment has changed a lot globally, right? And we could say, well, Europe and UK has certain exposures that are different from the US, where I am, and compared to Japan versus, Russia, whatever. And that's true. But if the incidence is going up, like we're saying, maybe 8% annually, somewhere around that number. Why is that? My contention is we're just living in a very chaotic, for lack of a better word, stressful. We're in a stressful way of living, and life is hard, and there's a lot of difficulty, and I think we're having a hard time with that in our own unique way. And I think the way I look at it is that there's something that's going on where if that is happening at a young age, like it is for many people, it's like kind of like the foundation of a house, and we're building this house of health, but it's not being built on firm, stable ground like concrete. It's being built on really, like quicksand, I like to call it, really rocky terrain. Maybe there was an earthquake at one point. We got cracks in it. And so that's analogous to whatever emotional, psychic, stress we've been through at some point in our life, usually early on in adolescence and childhood. And that's laying the foundation for this inhospitable environment for us to thrive in. And then we get hit with all these other things and stressors that compound on top of it. And then all of a sudden you have this house, great, but it's like made out of straw. It's about to fall apart. That's my theory right now, because I'm not behind the whole idea that, well, it's just the diet, it's the gluten, it's the BPA, it's this. It's not one thing, right? In some cases, yeah, maybe there's that one virus, it's COVID, it's cytomegalovirus, it's Epstein-Barr, what have you. But even still, I don't think that's enough. I think there's something underpinning all of that, behind all that, that's creating that antigen, that trigger to really set you off, if that makes sense. It's
Yeah,
not the best answer,
totally.
maybe, but that's just how I look at it.
No, I really like that analogy you've used of the foundations for a house, and it's almost like the house is being built of straw. Think of the kid's story of the three billy goats, isn't it? The wolf and blowing the house down and so on, like that. And I think I know from my own research, if anyone listening is a regular listener or follower of me, you know that I talk about how much greater risk women are at of almost every chronic illness and disease, from dementia to cancers to osteoporosis to autoimmune conditions and diseases. And 4 of every 5 person with an autoimmune condition is a female. And, in the UK, it said 4 million people have autoimmune conditions. I think in the US, it's something absolutely staggering. Is it like, I can't remember, it's 20 million or 30 million. And many people have more than one as well. So yeah, like with lots of other illnesses and diseases, women are being diagnosed more often than men. And from the research I've done at different times in different ways, it's really baffling, science and the medical profession. They don't know. And one of the things I'd asked Justin just to skip back to was on what some of these are. You mentioned Hashimoto's and MS. There's around 80 different autoimmune conditions. We're talking celiac disease, which my daughter has. So like you mentioned with Hashimoto's, people can have the genes that put them at greater risk of developing celiac disease, but it doesn't mean they always get it. And often celiac disease is genetic, but I've been tested and I don't have it, and I don't believe I carry the gene for it, and nobody else in our family has it on either side. So yeah, there's diseases like that. Arthritis, any of the other common ones, just to give people some ideas of what we're talking around here.
Yeah, no, you're totally right about that. Yeah, and I coming back to what I was just saying, to me, it really just is just a sensitivity thing, and that's really what it is. I think your immune system just gets more sensitive over the years, based around how much your system is getting hit with all these challenges and threats that is unique to you. And so I think it just piles up, and that's basically the whole situation, I think, for most people. And then it just kind of spirals out of control in a sense, because you're not going to necessarily get an autoimmune disease from one thing, but then you start reacting to more stuff, more foods, more pathogens, more toxins. And I've seen that even with my mom. And why is that? Well, her history is pretty heavy with stress. So I think that's not everybody's situation, but for a lot of people I see, I don't know about you, but that's kind of the deal.
Yeah, and I do think there's a link in midlife and what's happening with our sex hormones, well, and other hormones during menopause. And again, this is not known because it hasn't been well researched. Menopause hasn't been well researched, full stop. But the fact that it's often during and post the perimenopause and menopause stage that women are diagnosed with these different diseases, there has to be some kind of shift there. And is it because we're under more stress physically and mentally in lots of different ways when we're experiencing menopausal changes? Or is it the reduction in those specific sex hormones that's leading to the change physiologically? Yeah, there's all of those questions there, which I know neither you or I are qualified enough to talk about. But like I say, that knowledge just isn't really out there. I think there's lots of talk about it, but there isn't solid research to say this is what we really think is happening, but we can see a correlation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely what I see too. And I would say that the hormonal changes that are happening are, again, not the thing. The way I look at it is it's more or less the straw that broke the camel's back for women. It's not,
Mhm.
again, we think it's that. And I just go, yes, that's a part of it, but you didn't get this way from that one thing, or the food you ate last week, or the exposure you had last month. Even the drop
Yeah.
in estrogen is pretty profound as far as what impact it has. And well, eventually estrogen, but progesterone essentially as well, because they're buffers against cortisol. And if cortisol is flooding your system, and you've been in chronic fight or flight mode and stress and survival mode for many years, which some people don't realize they are, that started in childhood when they were 8 years old. And well, that's kind of what happens. And then you don't have that protective shield. There's a lot of even with insulin sensitivities, all these sort of things going on. But when you don't have progesterone and estrogen, yeah, you're more likely to be, you're more stress sensitive at that phase of your life, right? And
Mm.
that's also what I think is contributing to this, we'll say onset of autoimmune disease at that age of life.
I completely agree. And I think alongside the practical physiological change in the hormones, and as you said there, what happens with our cortisol levels, the fact we're changing and experiencing what can often be, and I'm talking from experience because I'm way in the middle of perimenopause, what can be lots of different changes that are difficult to manage, very disruptive in lots of ways. Lots of women, which we'll come on to, start to gain weight and feel unhealthy and lose confidence from an emotional sense, and start making often quite drastic changes to their diet and way of life. As you said, it's that perfect storm. It's kind of, this is all not being working harmoniously without really realizing, and everything that's happening with the hormonal changes and the ripple effects of those in how you feel and live just come together and create possibly an autoimmune condition. So the one you're an expert in is Hashimoto's, which I remember when I first heard it a couple of years or so ago, I didn't have a clue what it meant, and I had no idea how common it was in women and how disruptive it is as well. And I love what you talk about with the diet and pace and the nervous system regulation and all of those things that could lead to having this particular autoimmune disease or others as you're sharing. So tell me a little bit then about what it is, and with your your
Mm-hmm.
American mom story, because her story is, I know, very typical with others who experience this disease.
It's interesting because I didn't catch it at first. I was initially thinking about, okay, we'll do the protocols and all these things and do the natural functional medicine stuff, because that's what I was new to when I got started graduate school about a decade ago. So that made sense. And then over the years with working with clients, I could see that that was inadequate. And I started to wonder, like, why is that? You're doing all the right things, so why aren't you seeing results in losing weight and having more energy and no more brain fog, et cetera? And I think really catching the sort of personal behaviors, maladaptive coping strategies, you might say, that was something that got my attention. That really actually started with a lot of young women I was working with who were in their 20s and had eating disorders and anorexia and binge eating and all that sort of stuff. And it just piqued my interest. And I go, well, why is this involved with something like autoimmunity, or even PCOS even as well, which I see a lot. And so I started to connect the dots, I guess. And then I look back at my mom's story and I go, well, no one ever talked to her about her history and her childhood, and asked the question, the most important question, well, how did I come to be this way? What's my story? Right. And that was it for me. I just went, okay, well, that's the piece that hasn't been the psycho-emotional, unconscious, subconscious stuff that we were carrying around, like rocks in a backpack, and don't realize. And it's not to say that, well, we could say that from research, we know that that stuff can leave a lasting impact on the nervous system. And there was a new study that just came out, I saw yesterday, about how childhood trauma, and specifically emotional neglect and emotional abuse, are major culprits and factors in Hashimoto's. And that's something I've already been seeing for years. So I could tell you that's definitely the biggest kind of trauma, we'll say, although people don't see it that way. And so that's why a lot of people like my mom probably didn't connect the dots and see that, because it's already deep in the past, and maybe there's some suppressed feelings around it for sure. And I think that can, if we know that can actually energetically make a change and have an effect on the physiology in a not so good way if we're carrying that around. But we don't actually feel the effects of that. But what we're seeing is the manifestation of that in terms of not just beliefs, but behaviors and personality patterns and things that seem normal. And to me, that was the red flag. And that's what I can't unsee that now. It's really very clear to me that there's a lot of people that, because they raise their hand, they tell me this, I don't have to like find it. It's just, yeah, I'm a type A person. I'm a people pleaser. I put everybody's needs first. I minimize my own self. I don't know how to slow down. I can't sit in silence. I feel uncomfortable. I'm in my head all the time. I'm so busy. I'm always overworking, overdoing, all that stuff. And my mom's a nurse. She's a caregiver. She's always putting everybody first. And I just thought, maybe there's something to that. And just because energetically you're putting energy out when you have nothing left for you, and that battery is inevitably going to drain, right? So there's a lot of dimensions we're hitting on. It's not just physical, it's emotional too, and spiritual in a lot of ways, I think. And so I think that's, again, another unconscious stress. And that is just catching up to you. It's a slow burning fire that I think accumulates over the years. And that's part of the reason, my theory is that that's part of the reason why women get hit with these diseases. They just don't realize that they're thinking about the environment all the time, which is just a part of it. So that's how I got interested in that, because I've realized that if that doesn't get addressed and we don't change those things, it's almost impossible to really get in remission and to be symptom free and to have any control of any disease.
Yeah. And so in your mum's journey and experience, I'm guessing it was initially, before you joined some of these dots up, a very traditional Western medical approach to it, in that, there's test done, it's Hashimoto's, you need to manage your diet. And I think, without being too holistic, general medical doctors are talking about managing stress and sleep when it comes to Hashimoto's, along with diet, probably exercise as well, but very prescriptive with this is what's wrong with you. And just to explain that the Hashimoto's is a thyroid autoimmune disease, so it impacts your thyroid and it can lead to weight gain and energy slumps, and there's lots of elements to it. Going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but a lot of people don't realise this with many autoimmune conditions. Like, my daughter has celiac disease, and people will say, oh, so if she ate it, would she just like be throwing up or have diarrhea and then that's it? And I'm going, well, she throws up violently for maybe 2 hours. But actually, it's the damage that this causes in the short term, as in over a few weeks. She, could not be absorbing nutrients and feeling low energy. But over time, it can lead to depression, to miscarriages, to fertility problems, to bone health problems. And likewise with all of these different conditions, many of them have multiple things that they cause. I think when women especially think about thyroid challenges, we think about weight gain or perhaps weight loss and just focus on the food, which is what I think happens with Hashimoto's more often. And I think this is something I'm really interested in, just an overall. And my signature coaching program is called Mind Body Collective, because I'm trying to build a collective of women who realize how connected we are, mind and body. Because in my own health journey, which was initiated through mental health challenges, but then physical things happened which I didn't connect to my mental challenges, because I just believed logically they're separate. I've got this physical issue and that's caused by something. The mental health issue is caused because I have a fault in my brain, and that's that issue. And I learned through my own journey how we are connected holistically as this human machine that we are. And like you're saying, it's all of those pieces together which can cause something that could be, in itself a gut problem, or any other autoimmune condition, problem in another organ, but actually it could be as a result of our mind and how we are as a person and who we are in our life experiences. But yet traditional Western medicine doesn't generally take that into account. You don't go to the doctors and then they say, okay, we found this on test results, and I'd also like to chat to you about how you live. How do you manage stress? What's your experience, as you said? And so in your mum's case, you start to put them pieces together, and then what difference did that make to her and her Hashimoto's, management?
Mm-hmm. Well, I could tell you that she was already somebody who was pretty religious and spiritual, so that had a lot. There's a lot going for her there from that front, and I don't know how else to say this. I think that that's useful and that's great to have that. I think that's anything around that realm is really good for anybody, whatever you believe in and connect with. But as simple as it sounds, I mean, silence, solitude, and stillness, these three things are the hardest thing for women. And I think that's what it all boils down to, is how to access more of that, and what works for you there. Is it Qigong? Is it meditating and walking? Is it hanging out in nature? Is it going to the sauna? Whatever. I mean, we have to find that out. And I think that's just very challenging because we're wired to still be in survival mode based on past experiences and conditioning. So my mom had to learn how to do that kind of stuff. I think it's a big part of it. We could say and speculate that there was, just from learning about her life, that there was still the weight, the burden of fear-based emotions, essentially. We could say anxiety, we could say shame, unworthiness, maybe grief, right? Like, these are really deep-seated, low frequency emotions that affect the body, right? And so there is that side of it that we may not think that has an effect on the physiology. It does, because you'd be surprised what happens to the nervous system when you release that kind of stuff and discharge those trapped emotions. But if nothing else, it really comes down to, like, the most tangible thing to really change and to make a positive shift is really got to do with what's most obvious, which is how you're showing up in the world. And that's mostly what I'm leaning into, because that's the easiest thing to quote unquote sell people on, because they can see it. It's tangible. You can't see with the test what your emotions are and what it looks like yet. We're going to be able to do that at some point, right? But we're not there yet. And I just go, well, let's look at how your behaviors and patterns are right now, and where your energy is going, and where it could be diverted to going somewhere else, because you can't regenerate, recover, heal if you're doing all that, because your battery is literally depleted. Right. So I think that was probably the biggest teaching that I hopefully instilled into my mom, because she needs to learn how to rest. And again, it's all relative. You may not think like well, I'm just doing this, I'm doing shopping, I'm doing the laundry. Yes, that's true. You need to do those things perhaps, but it's more about how do you balance that with enough stillness that works for you, that is going to not be conflicting. It's not going to be uncomfortable, and it's not going to make you feel guilty, you might say, right? So it's a very subtle kind of thing, but that to me is really the make it or break it, I think, for progress and healing, because as I always say, the person that got you sick can't be the person that gets you better. Your identity essentially has to change. It doesn't mean you have to change your name, quit your job, stop being a mom, move to a different state, divorce your husband. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the thoughts, the stories, the emotions, the feelings, the patterns that arise from those have to fundamentally shift if you want to see a different result, in any way, but especially in any capacity, but especially with your body, right?
Yeah.
So that's a hard thing to get people to really buy into, because it just seems to like, it's not like a tangible thing, right? It's not a protocol you can follow. You can't just Amazon Prime your way to that. You have to really do the work. And that's why I just say, I know it's not easy. I know it's not the most comfortable thing to do perhaps, but and a lot of people are in denial or reject the idea because they're like, that's not me. I don't have anything going on. And then when they actually open up the door because they choose to, it's like, oh, okay, now I get it. Right. So that's the hardest thing, is getting people to be open-minded enough, I would say, to do that kind of thing. So long-winded answer, but I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does totally. And I love that expression you used about, the person who got you sick can't be the same person that heals you and gets you better. And that, you're right, it's so simple, but it's not easy to do, because as humans, we're wired to not like change and to make change difficult for us.
Mm-hmm.
And also the world we live in the time that we're alive now, is very busy and tech driven, and all of that is shifting how we're wired neurologically and so on and so on. So yeah, I totally agree with it all. And it is, like say, easy as such, but or simple, but it's not easy to implement, because also we have been taught growing up that this typical healthcare system approach in the West is what works. Is that you're sick, you take medication. Most people do not realize that medication isn't fixing the problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's helping with the symptoms, it's symptom management or resolution, but it's not problem solving. And I do feel the space we're seeing this rising blend of Eastern with Western medicine, like what you specialize in, this whole integrative approach. But it is very slow, because we've got these huge, monstrous healthcare systems that are not built and resourced to help people in that way. But when people do start to get this, it's life changing, isn't it? Like in your mum's and lots of your
Mm-hmm.
clients' experience. And while you were talking, I was thinking about irritable bowel syndrome, which isn't an autoimmune condition, but it's a chronic illness many women experience. And now they are starting to show that a lot of cases of irritable bowel are not as a direct result of diet, but are being caused by the brain, whether that's carrying stored negative emotions and trauma, or just your current mindset, which might be impacted by those things. But it's a mental health symptom essentially. And you've got that whole brain gut axis connection with the vagus nerve, and that can impact us in lots of different ways outside of IBS. But yeah, it's just so fascinating. So what I would like to just dive into a little bit is the diet side of things, and then lead to why that's not the route. Because as women, and I'm one of these who is continuously trying to work through this on a personal perspective, but I talk about this so much, it's one of my core values, is to shift away from that mentality that diet is the route to health, and being a smaller size and number on the scales is the route to health. And so when anything is wrong with women, and in the case of many autoimmune conditions and diseases, it's diet that's the focus and the only thing that they think is going to solve the problem. It's like, well, if I can at least lose weight, I'll feel better in myself, without knowing that that isn't going to fix the many symptoms and problems that that disease can cause. So you've written a book, or more than one book, on this topic, haven't you?
Yes. It's called The Post-Dieting Comeback. And really what that is it's about kind of the negative consequences and ramifications of chronic dieting, because we think that is what we need to do to get XYZ result, or whatever it is you're doing it for. I mean, that's really the bottom line. Is there are a lot of negative effects that happen, that is applicable to any woman, or any person, not just people with autoimmunity, but still it's usually coming from a deeper thing. Trauma is a lot of it, not always, but, and so we need to, if we want to achieve a certain weight or weight loss, then we have to put the right pieces in place. And unfortunately, what I find is that women are usually doubling down on what they're doing. So they're eating less, they're cutting out more food, cutting out more calories, cutting out carbs, and they're maybe doing more exercise. And especially when you're entering perimenopause and menopause, that is just a 1-2 punch to your goals. I mean, in the sense of you're not going to get it, because you're literally going backwards. We're doing it the wrong way. We're literally looking in the wrong direction. And so that's what that book's about. But I think what you said about diet and all that is, I mean, spot on. That's basically been I've been saying that for a long time, but because my background is in nutrition, that's what I went to grad school for. And it's very important. I'm not going to deny that, but yeah. It was really clear to me in the earlier part of my career that, well, if you're eating the best diet and taking supplements and working on your gut, like that's nice, necessary. But if it worked, you wouldn't still be here. You wouldn't still be trying to figure this out, doing different programs for the next 15, 20 years, whatever that is. And that's what we see, because we think it's just this, just that. It's no judgment. It's just, that's the belief, the indoctrination I think we're getting from certain people, influencers, social media, what have you. And it's unfortunate, because it's just, to me, a distraction. It's like, you've changed your diet 20 times. Why do we think changing it the 21st time is going to work and make a difference? It's probably not, right? So there are certain guidelines and things we want to follow, for sure, correct nutrient deficiencies and whatnot. But ultimately, the diet isn't the issue. It's the immune system that's the problem. And I think I just said it the other day, the sensitivities you have towards food and diet will not change until the immune system changes. And that won't change until your identity changes, essentially. And we think that, unfortunately, if we cut out foods for 90 days and reintroduce them, we're going to just be fine. And it doesn't really happen, right? Because the immune system sensitivities haven't changed either. It's complicated. There's a lot of factors, but at the end of the day, I'm just saying diet is not the be all end all. It's part of it to reduce inflammation and some of the burden. But it's because people ask me, I'm sure they ask you, how do I eat food again that I enjoy? I used to like bread. I used to eat like dairy and soy and corn and whatnot. But there is a way to tolerate those foods again, but it's not going to happen just by removing it. We have to actually do everything else from a mind, body, spirit perspective to send a new signal, send a new language to the body, so it can say, okay, we're not in cell danger survival mode anymore. We can be here and thrive. Right. And I think it's just not I don't know how else to say it. I think people just want to find the shortcut to this. And I get that. It just doesn't exist. You can't diet, supplement, and medicate your way out of this. There's no other way around it.
And what I'm saying, and I know it's definitely the same in the US, and actually, I don't think it's as fast growing in the way it is here in the UK with GLP-1 use. So things like Ozempic, because it's a lot cheaper here than what I know it is in the US. And you have a lot of medical professionals prescribing it, but prescribing it not in the way it's licensed to be used. So you have women who like me, in that they're pretty normal weight, not specific, particularly overweight, certainly not obese, meeting the criteria to use it, but are able to go online, order it without any of the proper checks and start using it, thinking, again, weight is the route to health, weight is the route to confidence, to liking myself, to happiness, fixing the problems, etc. And of course it's not, because that can lead to lots of problems, but it's that mentality of a short, quick fix, because again, the world we live in
Mm-hmm.
has made us think that that's, how it works. And also, because of that world, we're wired to want reward and those results instantly. And yeah, I see lots and lots of women now taking that shortcut because they just think that's going to fix it. And it's, I guess, it's different, but it's similar to what you touched on with women just trying to double down on the dieting through restriction and missing out on those vital nutrients and vitamins and all of the other things that food do and give us, which is actually causing bigger problems. So yeah, you might lose weight. You probably won't actually, or
Mm.
most won't in menopause, perimenopause stage. But you just adding to the problems you said, the straws getting looser and looser. And over time, it's actually going to fall apart. And one of the things you've touched on a few times, which is really why you say, on its own, dieting as a restrictive form doesn't work, is this nervous system regulation, is, as you say, this mind, body, spirit, holistic approach of looking at not just resolving trauma, but lots of things that could be dysregulated in your nervous system. And you've mentioned women and stress, and I know you've got these 5 Ps, the
Mm.
perfectionism, and people pleasing, how we are as women. So I'd love to just talk a little bit about that before we come to wrap up, Justin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this is something that I kind of pieced together again because I was noticing these patterns, and it was clear as day to me because my mom was one of them. And I never thought, no one ever mentioned to her that maybe that's part of why she got here and why she's also not getting better. And that's actually what I would say, is that it may not be like the most significant factor. I don't know. It's a theory as to why we get hit with an autoimmune disease, because it comes later. We acquire these sort of personality traits, patterns later. Um, but the fact of the matter is, we're living this way now, and it's got more to do with the energy behind it. That's why it's an
Mm,
energetic thing, not a, well, I'm just helping out my neighbor. I'm just putting, I'm just putting my energy over. I'm helping this person. I'm working hard over here. Working 11 hours today, and it's got to do with the energy, the thoughts that are behind it. You might have the emotions that are behind it. It really has to do from the place of which you're doing it from,
mm,
which we're not really conscious of.
mm-hmm,
And most of the time, it's done from a survival based perspective because it's a striving energy. And that's all that is. It's a striving energy. People pleasing, perfectionism, peacemaking. It's a striving energy. I'm putting energy out to try to feel safe. Basically, it comes down to, I need to feel safe and secure, and if I don't have that, and if I don't have that, I'm in danger. And the best way I can do that is by wearing these hats and doing these things so that I feel seen and valued and safe, basically. And that belief comes from, again, unconsciously, usually from some time in the past, when I
mm,
call them, really the acronym I use is call the cut, right? Continuous unconscious trauma. And I created that because people don't see it as trauma per se. It's unconscious in a sense, but call whatever you want. It's a cut, a psychic cut, right? That is still there and hasn't been healed. And
yeah.
it comes out in these personality patterns. We just don't recognize it. And I talk about that in the book as well, but that can come out in a lot of different ways: eating disorders, addictions. It's a
Mm-hmm,
lot of things. But for me, it's that neglect. It's those sort of subtle things that I talk a lot about because that's what most women I see are dealing with or have had. I had a great childhood. My parents were great, blah, blah, blah. And I get that, but that's really that's true, but also this is true as well. You didn't feel seen. Maybe you watch your parents fight. They were going through a divorce. You were told by your aunt that you need to go on a diet and lose weight, and you were only 8 years old. I've heard all of this stuff.
Yeah.
You don't think that has an impact? And then you wonder why you have a poor relationship with food, you're binge eating, when you're stressed, all that stuff. And it doesn't seem like a bad thing, like people pleasing and working hard and being a perfectionist. But again, the energy and the stress behind it is physically draining. It's cranking out cortisol in ways we don't see it. We're not sweating and having our heart race, but it's having an impact. And this is what I mean. You can actually catch this stuff on labs in a sense of like where there's stress. And so if you're doing all the right diet and supplements and gut protocols and what have you, the parasite cleanse and metal detox and all that stuff, that's fine. But if that worked and was enough, you would be better. But it doesn't happen because you're still sending the message, the signal of we're not safe through these patterns, behaviors. Right. It doesn't always work that way. But my observation is that until that shifts, and really what I mean by shifting, I mean, it means you're not getting rid of it. We're not trying to say, don't do this, don't do that. It's actually never the goal. The goal is to learn to work with them in a balanced way. So if you're a workaholic, busy, high performing mom is at a 10 all the time, she's got to come down to like maybe a 5. Let's work on getting her to a 6 or maybe even a 7 for now. Right. And then we can move it down a little lower, but it's about that. It's about just like the dimmer switch. And we have to do that, not because only because if we don't, we're never going to give the time and space for the body to heal. And it just comes down to, well, how badly do you want more energy? How badly do you want weight loss? How badly do you want to not react and lash out at your kids and yell at your husband all the time or whoever it is, right? Like, no judgment. It's just, if you want these things to change, you have to fundamentally change yourself and your identity. And that's hard work, but that's in essence what we have to think about doing, instead of being like, well, what do I avoid today? Is it the chemicals? Is it the BPA? Is it this? It's not about more avoidance. It's about building more resilience.
Yeah. And that is why coaching is so powerful, because someone can know all the stuff. They can have the education piece on what to eat and how to exercise and supplements to take, etc. But if you haven't gone inside to look at things like what your values are and how you really feel, why you are the way you are, all of that self-awareness, that's the missing part. I think where you're always stuck in kind of consciously having to live the way you're trying to live to feel the way you want to feel. Whereas when you do that inner work, that's when you can make it, as you say, your new identity. And it's not about changing everything about you. I'm a perfectionist. I do think it was in my genes because I was labelled as a perfectionist child, but I know that that also led to me having some of the challenges with perfectionism that I've inherited because I was labelled this child in that way. And now, you know, I'm still a perfectionist, but I have that awareness. I use it more to my advantage than how it was in the past and so on. And so, yeah, I love all of that. And I will just say, like, I listen to so many podcasts with lots and lots of different health experts. And I really do like the way you're talking about this. I think what you say makes a lot of sense and is the kind of stuff I'm hearing other people talk about it, but I love the way you framed it, and that cut analogy, I think really holds on to something. So definitely get your voice out talking more about that, because yeah, you're so right. Like, and we could do a whole other hour just talking about all these challenges we have as people, but women especially, with, as you say, this challenge to do it all, be it all, tick all the boxes, show up on social media with the perfect life. And ultimately what I'm about is helping women have strong self-worth, because if you don't have self-worth, you're always going to be in survival mode in some form. Right. So we have to value ourselves. And I think it's a two-way street. That worth comes when you take care of yourself and you have these healthy habits and so on. So just to kind of close us off, I'd love to get your thoughts on 3 steps to give someone as a piece of advice to help them take this approach with themselves as a starting point to look at who they are and this energy, as you speak about, to start to make positive shifts with or without an autoimmune disease, diagnosis, we can all take on board something like this to improve our health. Because what I was thinking when you were just talking towards the end there was, this isn't just about fixing those things that aren't feeling right or well right now. This is absolutely about your health span, because women are
Mm-hmm.
living longer than men with these kinds of conditions, living longer in ill health than what men are.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to be aware of this long-term risk we have. So let's, do it for lots of reasons, but to live old, to live strong as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, the question was, forgive me, you said
The
habit.
three steps. Yeah,
Yeah.
3 steps someone can take to perhaps build a habit, that's going to support
Okay.
them being more regulated and feeling healthier.
It comes down to ultimately, like you said here a minute ago, about self-awareness around your stories and your beliefs and the emotions you're still harboring that are driving those behaviors and beliefs, right?
Mm,
Um, this is why behavior change is through just saying, hey, just do this and don't do that. It doesn't really work. I mean, we know that it can work, but usually it doesn't, because you're you got a party that wants to change, or the party who is like, no, we like doing this, right? It's so there's a conflict, there's dissonance. So really, to change that kind of stuff, you have to go deeper, which means you have to really pull out those unconscious beliefs and stories that have been running your life. You have to identify those trapped emotions that drive those behaviors and explore the, probably not always, the deeper experiences, the cuts, the unconscious trauma, adversity, whatever you went through in your life that is teaching your body you're in survival mode and your nervous system is acting this way, because that's where it all stems from. So until you recondition your nervous system to respond differently to triggers, you're going to keep defaulting to these habits. So I think really what it comes down to is, and it's hard because it's going to revolve around this sort of silence, solitude, stillness I talk about, where we have to really
mm,
practice sitting with ourselves. And there's a whole thing around, well, just figuring out and tapping into your subconscious mind, which is a whole different discussion in a sense. But we have to learn how to drop into that and see what's there. Um, and then I would also say the easiest way for us to do this is not necessarily through affirmations or just meditation, but actually it's going to be about visualizing a future self, and future pacing, and seeing and hearing and feeling the positive outcomes of that, and creating that kind of visceral experience and teaching your brain a new way of being. So behavioral forcing isn't enough.
mm-hmm.
Affirmations aren't enough. Your brain needs to have a new thought, a new emotional embodied feeling, and then there's a chance for change, right? And through that, actually, there is going to be probably, hopefully, some identity restructuring over time with practice and consistency. But that's what it comes down to. When you find out what's there, creating the obstacles, and you work through that, there's a doorway to, oh, I can actually be this person and show up this way, or see myself doing this. You're more likely to buy into that, right? That's why I
Mm-hmm.
like qigong, because it's actually a good way to kind of not just regulate, but actually do feel into a new emotion, bring in your own visualization, bring in your own thoughts that are in alignment with what you want. And then it's not so much I got to convince myself to do this. It's more of like, it's who you are. And the future
Yeah.
pacing and visualizing and feeling what that's like is actually really useful too, because the brain doesn't know the difference between a real experience and an imaginary one. So when you do that over
Mm.
time and you rehearse it and you reinforce it, you are teaching a new language to the body, and that can kind of suddenly become the default state over time, if that makes sense. So it's
Yeah,
not easy. It
absolutely.
just takes
Mm-hmm.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. And I use visioning a lot in my programs. They've all got some kind of visioning tools included, and it's such a powerful thing. It's been a huge tool that I've used personally in terms of me building the business and having
Mm-hmm.
that self-belief, but also in a health perspective and just how I feel in my own confidence and self-worth. So yeah, and I think as Justin said there with the silence, solitude, and stillness, that can also be done in different ways. We're not just talking about sitting, meditating, or sitting in absolute silence.
Yes.
That could even be, I'm presuming, journaling, even some introspective kind of self-coaching when he's talking here in these steps about self-awareness and going in and thinking about that emotion and then where that might have come from in terms of a cut and so on. So yeah, some great advice there
It's
that
really
I
just
think
doing
we can
less.
take.
That's all it is. Yeah.
Yeah, just do less, just do less.
Yeah. I mean, it's, easy to say. Yeah. I mean, conceptually
Mm,
easy to understand, but hard to do. But that's really what it is. Not literally staring at a wall. I'm not saying to do that, but
yeah,
that
and
would be
it's
good too.
just so ironic, isn't it? Because as we've touched on, really, the world is telling us to do more. We think more is
Yeah.
the key to success, happiness, the things we want, but actually doing more is killing us, really. Not to be too dramatic, but yeah. So you've heard it here, do less. And I do have some podcast episodes. What I'll do actually when I'll write a blog based on our conversation, I will link to one episode in particular I'm thinking of, which is all about taking time to rest and having that space and what
Hmm.
rest can look like outside of sleep and why it's so important. That was a really interesting conversation. So just to let everyone know where they can reach you, I'll pop into the show notes links. But where's the best place to connect more with you? Is it TikTok, Instagram? I know you like to use those platforms.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's those two. It's the easiest way
Mm,
to find out about all this kind of stuff we're talking about because I go on a lot and just try to teach people, educate, provide value. It's what I'm here to do, just to get people to look at
mm,
this differently because it's without that change of perception, nothing's going to change.
mm.
So I'm just trying to get people to look instead of this way at protocols and diet, all the things out there all the time. It's like, well, how about look over here and see what this could also give you? So,
Mm.
yeah, it's just my name at Justin Janoska on both platforms, but check it out and hopefully you find something useful there. I
Yeah,
think you will though.
fantastic. As I say, I'll link to that and definitely have a look. So you've got some brilliant videos, as you say, very educational and expanding on some of this, or maybe expand on it, but in these short
Mm-hmm.
snippet videos, which some people would find much more, easy to keep coming back to and reinforcing what we've shared in this episode. So thank you so much for your time and insights. Really appreciate having you on and talking about this subject.
I appreciate you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.